I've always loved the idea of living alone. No roommates, no shared spaces, just my own little world finally. So when I found an apartment I could actually afford in a decent neighborhood, I jumped at the chance. It was a small one-bedroom in an older brick building, the kind with narrow hallways and creaky wooden floors, but it had charm. The second I stepped inside, I knew it was mine. The leasing office had assured me that most of the tenants were quiet, mostly older people or young professionals who kept to themselves. That was perfect. The only downside? The unit above me, apartment 402, was empty. I'm actually looking for a tenant for that one now. The leasing agent, a woman named Linda, had told me when I signed the papers. It's been vacant for a couple of months. That was fine by me. I liked the idea of not having to worry about noisy upstairs neighbors. Or so I thought. The building itself had an eerie feel, but I chalked that up to it being old. The hallways smelled like a mix of stale carpet and something vaguely metallic, and the elevator was so slow and janky that I avoided it altogether, opting for the stairs. Inside my apartment, though, everything felt cozy. I spent the whole day unpacking, filling the space with little touches that made it feel like home. Warm lamps in the corners, some art on the walls, and the scent of the vanilla candle I always burned when I moved somewhere new. By the time I collapsed into bed that night, I was exhausted. Moving alone is no joke, and my body ached from hauling furniture up 3 flights of stairs. But as I lay in bed staring up at the ceiling, something felt off. It wasn't a bad feeling necessarily, just a sense of unfamiliarity. The kind of feeling you get when you wake up in a hotel and, for a split second, forget where you are. I eventually drifted off to sleep, the faint hum of the city outside my window lulling me into a heavy, dreamless rest. Then, at exactly 3:02 a.m., I woke up. Not because of a bad dream, not because I had to pee, no, I woke up because of a sound. A deep, heavy scraping sound coming from the apartment above me. At first, I thought maybe I was imagining it. But then it came again, louder this time. It sounded like someone was dragging something across the hardwood floor directly above my bed. Not just a chair or a small table either. This was heavy furniture, something big being pushed inch by inch across the room. I sat up, rubbing the sleep from my eyes. I was sure 402 was empty. Linda had told me it was. Maybe she'd found a tenant last minute? But wouldn't I have heard them moving in? Wouldn't there have been some commotion earlier in the day? I glanced at my phone. 3:03 a.m. The sound continued. Kerkrayapi. Pause. Kerkrayapi. It went on for maybe 5 minutes, then stopped completely. The silence after was deafening. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe someone was up there cleaning. Maybe a maintenance worker had gone in late at night for some reason. I rolled over, pulled the blankets tighter around me, and forced myself back to sleep. The next day, I convinced myself it had been my imagination. I went about my routine, finished unpacking, and even made a trip to the grocery store to stock up my fridge. By the time night rolled around, I felt completely at ease. Until it happened again. At 3:02 a.m. on the dot, I woke up to the exact same sound. That same slow, methodical scraping above me. I held my breath, listening. It lasted for exactly 5 minutes again. Then, just like before, silence. Now I was freaked out. I considered going upstairs to check, but something about that idea made my skin crawl. It didn't feel right. Instead, the next morning, I stopped by the leasing office and asked Linda if someone had moved into 402. She frowned. No, it's still vacant. Why? I hesitated, not wanting to sound paranoid. I heard something up there last night. Like furniture being dragged around. Linda shook her head. No one should be in there. Maybe it was the pipes? The building is old. Sometimes noises carry in weird ways. I nodded, but I didn't believe her. Pipes don't sound like furniture being pushed across hardwood floors. That night I stayed up, determined to catch the noise as it happened. I kept my lamp on, scrolling mindlessly through my phone to keep myself awake. At exactly 3:02 a.m. it started again. And this time I heard something else. A soft, rhythmic tapping. Not just anywhere, directly above my bed. Tap, tap, tap. I stared at the ceiling, my body frozen. Then came a sound that made my stomach drop. A single deliberate knock. Like someone knocking on the floor of 402. Right above me. I don't know how long I lay there staring at the ceiling. My body refused to move. My breathing had gone shallow, my heart hammering so hard I could hear it in my ears. The knock had been deliberate, too precise, too intentional. I strained to hear any more sounds, but nothing followed. No footsteps, no voices. Just silence. And silence can be so much worse than noise. Eventually, I forced myself to move. I reached for my phone, checking the time. 3:07 a.m. The noise had stopped exactly 5 minutes after it started, just like the night before. I wanted to tell myself it was something harmless, that I was overreacting. But deep down I knew something was wrong. The next morning I was exhausted, barely functional at work. Every time I closed my eyes I heard it again. The scraping, the tapping, the knock. That evening I made up my mind I was going upstairs. After dinner, when the building was quiet, I walked up to the 4th floor. The hallway looked identical to mine, just slightly darker, like the lighting didn't quite reach all the way. Apartment 402 was at the end, just like mine was below. I stopped in front of the door. Something felt wrong. I can't explain it. It was the kind of wrong that makes your stomach twist, that sends a shiver down your back even when there's no breeze. I had been so sure I would knock, but now that I was here, every part of me was screaming don't. I didn't knock. I just pressed my ear against the door. Silence. No movement inside. No faint hum of a fridge or creak of someone shifting their weight. Nothing. I reached for the doorknob, almost without thinking. My fingers brushed the metal. It was ice cold. I jerked my hand back. Something about that door felt wrong. Like touching it too long would be a mistake. I hurried back downstairs, locking my door behind me. I didn't sleep that night. I barely even got into bed. I just sat on my couch, watching TV with the volume low, waiting for 3:02 a.m. And right on schedule it started again. The slow, heavy scraping. Then the tapping. This time I counted 12 taps. Then came the knock. And then something new. A sound I never wanted to hear. A long, slow exhale. It was muffled, faint, but unmistakable. Came from directly above me. Like someone was lying on the floor in 402. Face pressed against the hardwood, breathing down at me. I left my apartment the next morning without looking back. That I barely slept after that night. Every time I closed my eyes I replayed the moment over and over. The knock, the tapping, the breath. It had been so clear, so deliberate. There was no way I had imagined it. I didn't go back to my apartment after work. I told myself I was just being paranoid, but still I stayed out late, grabbed dinner at a diner, wandered through a bookstore, even went to a coffee shop just to kill time. Anything to avoid going home. By the time I finally got back, it was nearly midnight. I hesitated in the hallway before unlocking my door, my stomach twisting with something close to dread. The apartment felt wrong. Not different exactly. Nothing was out of place. But the second I stepped inside, my skin prickled, like the air was thicker somehow. Stagnant. Heavy. I locked the door behind me, double-checking the deadbolt. I refused to look at the ceiling. Instead, I turned on every light in the apartment. The living room, the kitchen, even the tiny bathroom. Brightness made things feel normal, safe. I curled up on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, phone in my hand. I thought about texting someone, but who would I even text? What would I even say? Hey, I think my empty upstairs neighbor is breathing on me at night. No, that would make me sound insane. Instead, I distracted myself. Scrolled through social media, played some mindless game, turned the TV on low. I tried to stay awake, but at some point exhaustion won. My eyes shut. My body relaxed. I must have dozed off, because when I woke up it was 3:02 a.m., and something was different. The scraping was still there, that slow, heavy drag across the floor above me. But now there was a new sound. A faint creaking. Not from above. From inside my apartment. I stayed completely still, every muscle in my body locking up. My eyes darted around the room, heart hammering so hard it felt like it would break through my ribs. It came again. A slow, deliberate creak. Like a footstep. I held my breath. Listen. Silence. I wasn't alone. I didn't know how I knew it, but I knew it. That same heavy feeling in the air. Like the walls were pressing inward. Like something unseen was watching. I wanted to turn my head to look, but I was too afraid. And then, tap, 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 right above me. I thought I was going to be sick. I squeezed my eyes shut, forcing my breathing to stay quiet, controlled. My fingers tightened around my phone. I didn't know what to do. Then the worst sound yet. A whisper. Low. Faint. right next to me, so close I felt it against my ear. I know you're awake. I ran out. I don't even remember unlocking the door. 1 second I was frozen on the couch, and the next I was bolting into the hallway, slamming the door behind me so hard the walls shook. I didn't stop. I ran down the stairs, skipping steps, nearly tripping over myself in my panic. I just needed to be out of that apartment, out of that building. My only thought was to put as much distance between me and whatever was in there. By the time I reached the front entrance, I was shaking so badly I could barely get my fingers to work the lock. The street outside was eerily empty, the orange glow of the streetlights flickering against the pavement. I stumbled forward, chest heaving, barely able to breathe. I didn't stop moving until I reached a 24-hour diner a few blocks away. The second I stepped inside, I felt a rush of relief, bright lights, people, the clatter of dishes, and low hum of conversation. Normalcy. I sank into a booth in the corner, my hands still trembling as I gripped the edge of the table. A waitress, a woman in her 50s with tired eyes and a name tag that said Diane, walked over, giving me a once-over. "Hon, you okay?" I must have looked awful. My skin felt clammy, my breathing uneven. Yeah, I lied. My voice was hoarse. Just, long night. She gave me a look that said she didn't believe me but didn't push. "What can I get you?" "Just, coffee. Please." She nodded and walked off. I buried my face in my hands, trying to calm down, trying to make sense of what the hell just happened. Because the whisper? That wasn't my imagination. I had felt it. The warmth of breath against my ear. The way the hairs on my neck stood up like static. The voice had been real. And my door had still been locked. Which meant whatever was in my apartment had been inside the whole time. I felt sick. My stomach twisted, nausea creeping up my throat. The coffee arrived. I wrapped my hands around the mug, trying to soak up the warmth, trying to ground myself. I needed to think. Needed to figure out what to do. Going back wasn't an option. Not yet. I pulled out my phone and did something I should have done days ago. I looked up my building. At first, I found nothing. Just the usual apartment listings, basic information. But then I dug deeper, old forums, local news archives, anything that mentioned my address. And that's when I found it. A post from 6 years ago. It was buried deep in an old message board, a thread about creepy apartments in the city. Someone had posted about my building. Anyone else ever live at my address? Had to break my lease because that place was fucked. Used to hear noises at night from the empty unit above me. Not just creaks either, like furniture being dragged. Thought I was losing it until my neighbor heard it too. Landlord said it was just the pipes, but nah. Nah, man. It got worse. Tapping on the ceiling. Knocking. And one night, I swear to God, someone whispered my name. My stomach dropped. The replies were just as bad. Lived there in 2011. Same thing. 402 was empty but still heard noises at night. Weirdest part? When I finally got fed up and went up there, the whole unit was covered in dust. No footprints. No signs anyone had been inside. Like no one had stepped inside for years. Another reply. I used to deliver food to someone in that building. There was this old guy, super paranoid, lived on the 4th floor. Told me once he never walked past 402 after midnight. Wouldn't say why. Just shook his head and said, "Don't stop walking. Don't look inside." I felt like I was going to throw up. The waitress, Diane, walked by again and paused, eyeing me carefully. "You sure you're okay?" I looked up at her, my mouth dry. "Do you know anything about an apartment in my building?" 402. She frowned. "Which building?" I told her the address. Her expression changed immediately. She inhaled sharply, shifting her weight like she suddenly wanted to be anywhere but here. "Oh, that place." I gripped the edge of the table. "You've heard something?" She hesitated. Then after a long pause, she exhaled. "Yeah, a long time ago. Back when I was a kid." I didn't say anything. Just waited. She glanced around like she wanted to make sure no one else was listening, then leaned in slightly. There was a girl. Lived there in the 90s. Young. Maybe early 20s. She was quiet, kept to herself. But one day she just vanished. My pulse pounded in my ears. Vanished. Diane nodded. Her folks reported her missing. Cops searched the apartment. No signs of struggle, no forced entry, nothing. The door was locked from the inside. My hands felt ice cold. They never found her, Diane continued. No leads. No answers. Just gone. A lump formed in my throat. Which apartment was it? She gave me a small, grim smile. You already know which one. I stared at Diane, my heart thudding so hard I could barely hear anything else. The diner around me blurred, the clatter of plates and distant murmur of conversation fading into the background. 402. I already knew the answer before she said it, but hearing it out loud made it feel worse. Heavier. Like a confirmation of something I had been trying to deny. I swallowed hard. And no one ever figured out what happened to her? Diane shook her head. Nope. Some folks said she ran away. Others thought maybe she had a breakdown, left town without telling anyone. But she hesitated, choosing her next words carefully. Thing is, before she disappeared, she told people she was hearing things. That someone was inside her apartment at night. My fingers tightened around my coffee mug. She told her neighbor she kept waking up at 3:02 a.m. to the sound of furniture moving. That she'd hear tapping on her ceiling like someone knocking from above. Diane's eyes darkened. But she lived on the top floor. My stomach twisted violently. I pushed the coffee away, suddenly nauseous. Diane sighed, leaning back. People don't like to talk about it. But if I were you, Han, I'd break my lease and get out. I wanted to. I really wanted to. But the truth was I didn't have the money to just up and leave. I had signed a lease, paid deposits, spent everything I had to get that place. I couldn't just walk away. But I also couldn't go back there alone. I needed someone else to witness this, to confirm that I wasn't losing my mind. So I did something stupid. I called my friend Mark. Mark had always been the skeptical type. The kind of guy who watched horror movies and spent the whole time complaining about how fake they were. If there was a logical explanation for something, he'd find it. And right now, I desperately needed logic. He picked up on the third ring. Dude, it's 4 in the morning. I need you to come to my apartment, I said, voice shaking. Please. A pause. What? Why? I hesitated. If I told him the truth, he'd probably laugh, tell me to get some sleep. So instead I said, I think someone's been breaking in. That got his attention. Wait, what? You call the cops? No. I don't know if I'm imagining it. I just need someone else to be here. Please, Mark. He groaned. Jesus. Fine. Give me 20 minutes. I exhaled, relief flooding through me. Thank you. I hung up, paid for my untouched coffee, and made my way back home. The walk back felt wrong. The streets were empty, the wind unnaturally still. Every sound felt too loud, my footsteps, the occasional rustle of leaves, the distant hum of a street lamp. I kept glancing over my shoulder, feeling like someone was watching me. When I reached my building, I hesitated outside. My windows were dark. Nothing seemed off. But I knew better now. I forced myself to unlock the door and step inside. The air was thick. Stale. I left the hallway light on as I sat on the couch, my back pressed against the cushions, watching the front door like a hawk. 15 minutes passed. Then 20. I checked my phone. No messages from Mark. Another 10 minutes. Where the hell was he? I dialed his number. No answer. I texted him, dude, where are you? Nothing. Panic began creeping in. Mark was never the kind of guy to flake. If he said he'd be here, he'd be here. I stood up, pacing, trying to ignore the way my skin prickled with unease. I was about to call again when... a knock. Not from the ceiling. From my front door. I nearly collapsed with relief. I rushed over, unlocked it, and yanked it open. Mark wasn't there. No one was. The hallway was empty. A cold wave of dread crashed over me. My breath caught in my throat. I leaned out, peering both ways, expecting to see him messing with me. Nothing. The hall was completely silent. Then, tap, tap, tap. From behind me, inside my apartment. I turned around so fast I nearly fell. The taps were coming from the ceiling, right above me. And then, slowly, something new. A sound that made my blood run ice cold. Footsteps. Not from above. From my bedroom. From inside my apartment. Someone else was in here. My body locked up. I couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. The footsteps were slow, deliberate. Measured. Not the creak of an old building settling, not the random pops of wooden floorboards cooling at night. This was someone walking. Inside my bedroom. I took a step backward, heart slamming against my ribs. My apartment wasn't big, the bedroom door was barely 10 feet away, left slightly ajar. Just enough that I could see the dark sliver of space beyond it. The air inside the apartment felt wrong. Heavy. Like I'd stepped into a place I wasn't supposed to be. The footsteps stopped. Silence. Then, A slow creaking sound. My closet door. My stomach dropped. My mouth went dry. I had closed that door. I was sure of it. For several long seconds, nothing happened. Just silence. The apartment pressing down around me, my own pulse roaring in my ears. Then, a whisper. So quiet I almost thought I imagined it. But I didn't. It came from inside my bedroom. Inside my closet. Come look. I turned and ran. I didn't think. Didn't stop. I bolted for the front door, fumbled with the lock, yanked it open and stumbled into the hallway. The second I was out, I slammed the door behind me and kept moving. Down the hall. Down the stairs. Out into the street. I didn't stop running until I was a block away. Only then did I look back. My apartment window was dark. No movement. No sign of anything wrong. Just a quiet, empty building in the middle of the night. But I knew what I heard. And I knew I wasn't going back in there alone. I needed help. I fumbled with my phone, my hands shaking so bad I could barely unlock it. I tried calling Mark again. No answer. I swore under my breath, pacing on the sidewalk, the cold air biting at my skin. Something was wrong. He should have been here by now. I checked my text. Still nothing. Then, just as I was about to try again, my phone buzzed. A message from Mark. My stomach unclenched a little as I opened it. But when I read it, that relief evaporated. Mark, I'm already inside. Where are you? I stared at the screen, my entire body going numb. A horrible, twisting dread coiled in my gut. I swallowed hard and typed back. Inside where? A few seconds passed. Then, Mark, your apartment. You left the door unlocked. I'm in your room. I almost dropped my phone. No, that was impossible. I had just been there. I had just heard the footsteps. I had just heard the whisper. I felt lightheaded, my breath coming in short, sharp gasps. My hands were ice cold. I forced myself to type, my fingers barely working. Get out. Right now. The reply came almost instantly. Mark, why? Come inside. I turned and ran, but I didn't run toward my apartment. I ran in the opposite direction. I don't know where I was going. I just needed to move. To get as far away from that message as possible. Mark wasn't inside my apartment. He couldn't be. I had been there. I had seen it. There was no one there. Except, something had been in that closet. Something had whispered to me. And now, something was texting me from Mark's phone. I stopped running when I reached a gas station 2 blocks away. My lungs burned, my hands still trembling as I fumbled my phone out again. I hesitated, my thumb hovering over the screen. Then I called Mark. It rang. And rang. Then went to voicemail. I swallowed the lump in my throat and tried again. This time someone answered. But they didn't say anything. I pressed the phone to my ear. Every muscle in my body locked up. Silence. I opened my mouth about to speak. Then breathing. Slow. Shallow. Not Mark's. Not normal breathing. Something was wrong. I yanked the phone away from my ear like it had burned me. My heart was beating so hard it hurt. Then a sound crackled through the speaker. A whisper. Soft. Almost playful. I see you. I dropped the phone. It hit the pavement with a dull clack, the screen glaring up at me. I barely heard it. My pulse was roaring in my ears, my chest tight with terror. I spun around, my eyes scanning the street. Looking. Searching. No one. The gas station was empty. The road was empty. But someone was watching me. I could feel it. My phone buzzed on the ground. Another message. Mark, why are you running? I backed away, my legs trembling, my breath coming in short, frantic bursts. I needed help. Real help. I scooped up my phone and did the only thing I could think of. I called the police. The dispatcher's voice crackled through the speaker. 911, what's your emergency? I opened my mouth, but for a moment no sound came out. I was shaking so bad I could barely hold the phone to my ear. I need help, I finally stammered. Someone might be in my apartment. My friend was supposed to meet me there, but I swallowed. My throat felt tight. I think something happened to him. There was a pause. Then, what's your address? I gave it to them. Stay where you are. We're sending an officer now. I nodded, even though they couldn't see me. Okay. Can you describe the person inside? I hesitated. How could I? I had never seen them. Never seen it. The whisper. The footsteps. The text messages. The thing pretending to be Mark. None of it made sense. I don't know, I admitted. But something's wrong. Please just hurry. We're on our way. Stay on the line with me. I was about to answer when my phone buzzed again. Another message from Mark's number. I didn't want to look, but I did. Mark, the police won't help you. A fresh wave of terror crashed over me. My breath hitched. My vision blurred. The dispatcher's voice pulled me back. Ma'am, are you still there? I forced myself to respond. Why, yeah. An officer should be arriving soon. Are you in a safe location? Before I could answer, I heard sirens. A squad car pulled up to the curb outside the gas station. Relief hit me so hard my knees nearly buckled. I ran toward them, barely waiting for the officer to step out before I started speaking. There's something in my apartment. My friend was supposed to meet me, but he never showed up, and then I started getting messages from his phone. The officer, a stocky guy with sharp eyes, held up a hand. Slow down. What's your friend's name? Mark. Mark Bennett. His face changed. Something in his expression went tight, like he recognized the name. I noticed. What? I asked. What is it? The officer hesitated. Then he turned to the radio on his shoulder and murmured something I didn't catch. I could feel my pulse in my throat. Please, tell me what's going on. He exhaled. There was an incident earlier tonight. A car accident. A man named Mark Bennett. He hesitated again, glancing at me. He didn't make it. I stopped breathing. No, I whispered. My head was spinning. That's not possible. I just talked to him. He was coming to my apartment. The officer gave me a look. The kind of look you give someone when you're about to tell them something they won't believe. The accident happened hours ago, he said carefully. There's no way you spoke to him. I felt like I was drowning. My thoughts were spiraling. I shook my head, backing away. No, I got texts, calls. I heard him. Or I heard someone. The officer put a hand on my shoulder. We'll check your apartment. I barely registered the drive back. Everything felt unreal, like I wasn't in my own body anymore. When we arrived, the officers entered first. Guns drawn, flashlights scanning every inch of the place. I stayed in the hallway, arms wrapped around myself, my breath coming in shallow gasps. Minutes passed. Then, one of the officers called out, "Clear." I stepped inside. It looked the same. My living room, my kitchen, my half-empty coffee cup still sitting on the counter. Nothing was out of place. I walked to my bedroom, my stomach twisting itself into knots. The closet door was closed, the way I had left it. One of the officers opened it. Nothing inside. No signs of anyone. No proof that I had heard anything at all. The officer from earlier looked at me. Are you sure you didn't imagine? My phone buzzed. I almost dropped it. My fingers fumbled to unlock the screen. A new message. No number. No contact name. Just 2 words. Check the attic. I felt ice crawl down my spine. I looked up. Above me in the hallway ceiling was a small square attic hatch. I had never noticed it before.